Greetings and a good day, everybody. The lady on the screen needs no introduction. It's my honor and privilege to have you on my show, Captain Usha Banerjee. I would say Captain Doctor because I've heard that you've had your PhD as well. Um, I'm not going to do the usual introduction for this person because you can find about her, on Google when you just type Captain Usha Banerjee. But there are a couple of things that I'm going to talk about. One, a person who loves dancing says that she has learned a lot about dancing imbibed in her life. A person who's full of gratitude to whatever she has got in her life. And something which probably even I came to know recently is a mechanical engineering dropout. Now that's very surprising. Somebody who didn't enjoy engineering and said, I need to get into this profession of nursing, and says that probably she got picked into this particular fraternity. Welcome on my show, ma'am, and thank you for being on the Pearl Cruise show and helping us to make nursing visible day by day.
Good morning to you, Pearl. I understand it's such an early morning and you're doing this with so much of passion. So thank you for all that you're doing to make nursing visible. And I think investing your time, effort, energy, and financial resources to do this is amazing. God bless you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think I've just been inspired by so many nursing leaders, and I'm so glad that while I sit here in UK and learn about the NHS system, I can draw so many parallels. Yes, we do have a long journey to go ahead in nursing, but I do see the efforts of past, probably if I say 20 years, has really helped nursing advances in India at quite a fast pace. So, yes, ma'am, you have been a very, very eminent nursing leader, a healthcare leader as well. And I'm sure you must have got countless opportunities, not just to lead nursing, but, be at the helm of affairs in the broader prospects of healthcare. But I remember when I worked with you, when you said that Paul, people like us need to stay in nursing. I got pretty many times, tempted to go and take up other positions other than nursing. How did you manage to stay rooted to this profession for probably more than 3 decades now?
Well, a lot of people ask me this question because very early on in life, I've had many other diverse qualifications. And I think I did that with a purpose, not to branch out, but to ensure that it enables me to be a good leader. So whether it's training and development, whether it's quality, whether it's a human resource course or my PhD in management, etc., it was never with the intent to move out. And number two, who says that I'm not at the helm of affairs? I'm pitched at the topmost value chain of the ecosystem. So for me, and who says that my opportunities are small? I lead the enterprise as an equal partner and a member in the senior management team. So I think people are not seeing that as an opportunity. So they move out to probably take on, different roles. Well, that's a choice one would want to do, and I support that. But I still say there is a lot of opportunity to become the most valued person in the ecosystem of a healthcare entity because you're a nurse. Not many can bring that input to the table. And I always say that nurses can become anything. They are so enterprising. CEOs, CFOs, and there are different models in the world, and they can drive everything. But I'm not too sure how many can branch in and become a head of nursing and
Absolutely.
lead so many people, take on the accreditation bodies in terms of delivering the process that we comply to, or to impact business by ensuring that care is delivered in the right manner. So for me, I think it's a great place to be in. And I stand as an example in front of all of you that I've done well being in nursing. And I've grown. I lead a great life. And I'm really a partner in everything that the enterprise does. So for me, I would always stay in this role till I serve as an
Truly said,
employee.
ma'am, and I think and I have been a first-hand witness to to the great place that you enjoy at Apollo. Needless to say that the Apollo logo itself has a nurse on it, and I think when Chairman Sir, it's quite an inspiring leader. And you have always been there looking at his great leadership and always looking at his vision in nursing. So I completely agree, and like I said, I've been a first-hand witness to see that Captain Usha Banerjee is a partner in everything that happens at Apollo. So that's amazing, man.
Yeah, you've had a short stint with us, and you know how much of um, value you got an opportunity to bring that into the workplace. Number two, you also know that you had opportunities to meet chairman and the top leadership. Until date, they talk about you. So for me,
Okay.
just feel that that's the great opportunity we bring in as nurses, and you'll be remembered forever.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true, ma'am. I think that's probably the highlight of my whole career, where I stood next to Chairman Sir, and I still cherish that that moment.
So
Right.
the nurse is the most important entity in the organization because the logo stands testament to that.
Absolutely.
So I just
Absolutely.
wish that people realize that, because I can say I have walked that path, and I would want people to emulate that, because I've had a great life because I've stayed on in nursing. Maybe I would have
Absolutely.
done well even in other roles, but I don't think many can step in easily into the shoes that we wear.
Absolutely. And that's what I think the young nurses need to know. If they really persevere and pursue, there is no end to this journey, and there is so much value that they can bring onto the table. And I think I also stand corrected when I started trying out different roles, but my heart still belonged to nursing, and that's why I'm here today, where I am experiencing how nursing is practiced in the overseas world. And I would always tell to young nurses, stay rooted to the profession, because it is them who can probably make a difference, and nobody else.
So, moving on to our next question, ma'am. We have seen, I mean, I think at Apollo itself, we have seen that the way healthcare model has moved from very traditional models to a AI-driven model, and a lot of app-based systems. How well do you think our nursing community has adapted to this? Because there's a lot that the nurses need to handle, the IT systems in terms of inputting data, looking at the electronic medical records. Do you think, are we adequately prepared as nurses for this whole digital shifts that's happening in a very rapid way?
Well, I think, Pearl, that's a wonderful question. And, as we've embarked on this digital health mission for the country, and not only that, digital adoption as a way of life, I think our country has been very, very enterprising in adapting and adopting technology. You've seen it. Even the last mile
Yes.
is connected today, whether it is our cashless facilities or our daily life is impacted so much by this transformation. And I think we are rightly poised to take on a bigger chunk of this technology driven, care based solutions that might come into the market. And a lot of it has already arrived. And I'm so glad that amongst the other healthcare providers, nurses have been at the forefront of adopting technology. And we've seen it all. You've been here. You've always been a champion for transformation, and you see that nurses take on anything that's brought to them as a new learning. So they embrace that change so very fast. And I think not only adopting the solution, today nurses sit in committees that probably give inputs in building the product. So I think the technology partners have realized there's no point in creating a product which does not have the inputs of nurses. So customization is where nurses are playing a big role, and that's a strategic role. And at Apollo, we have created an ecosystem where, uh, these are led by nurses. And, Madam Sangeeta is a wizard in this space, and she promotes the use of technology to drive decisions, inputs, etc., for care at the bedside. And I'm also glad that one of our nursing heads, along with a few nurses, is sitting with the AI team. We have a wing at Apollo to look at how AI can actually bring in a lot of value into how we do our documentation or the early warnings and the triggers that might come in for different categories of patients. So I think we are at an interesting stage of this transformation, and I'm sure, 100% sure, that nurses will welcome this because it's going to be a great enabler, and nurses will also use it efficiently and see that this brings in value to what they do.
Well said, ma'am. I completely agree. I've seen a lot of movement in technology, and I've seen a lot of nurses involved in it. I started it back 10 years back when I was working at another organization. I've seen that happening very actively in Apollo as well, and many other organizations. I'm just waiting for a nurse to be, bringing out a new product. I'm sure there are nurses who have done that, but yeah, to nurses to lead this whole technology bit, because rightly said, it is so, their inputs are so valid and bang on, because I believe whenever technology, for technology adaptation, the UF, the user friendliness, is a very big quotient. And I think the end users, like the nurses and probably the doctors as well, give so many valid inputs, and people have certainly realized, and I do see nurses being involved in this, making of this product. So, yes, and nurses, I think, are people who know how to improvise on things and quickly adapt things into their daily life, no matter what. You give them anything, and they'll make sure that the care is provided to the patient in whatever possible manner that they can. Moving on to our next question, ma'am. Like you rightly said, nurses are very, very important in every aspect of healthcare, the clinical outcomes, the overall success, of the healthcare organizations. But yet, the pay scales and the working conditions of the nurses do not reflect this. Why do you think this is happening, and what do you think, will bring about a meaningful change in all this area? And as a nurse leader, how are you planning to address this issue?
Well, you've touched a very sensitive chord, Pearl. I think every profession goes through an evolution, and there's a phase. And I'm glad, I'm very optimistic that I see a positive trend. Look at people like you, me, and many of us, and many of my counterparts have done very well in the past 2 decades or so. And you said that at the start of this conversation. And most of us have been nurtured by great teachers, and our foundation is so very strong. So I still feel that the profession holds a lot of good here back in India. But I think what needs to change is definitely the working conditions, the pay, the privilege, the inclusion of nurses in clinical stories, at every level, at the organization level, at the media level, at the community level, at the patient level. And when I say this, and of course, our regulatory authorities, our associations, bodies, and I think a lot of efforts are there today to do this. And many of us have united together to make this happen. While I say that, I think what will bring in that change is going to be from the nurses themselves. The quality of education that we bring in, the knowledge that we demonstrate while we are at work, the advocacy towards our patients, the whole patient safety movement, which can be championed by nurses. Nurses doing their bit to innovate. And you said even probably patent a technology product. When this will happen, I'm sure things will change. And you are in agreement with me when COVID happened. I think there was a lot of recognition for nurses, right from the Prime Minister down the line. The spotlight turned. So I think it's going to be a very comprehensive approach where everybody comes together to ensure that nurses are given their due worth for being an integral part of generating the best outcomes that the country is today standing poised at. And I'm sure The movement has started, only that we need to probably calibrate our pace and accelerate our speed. And hopefully we'll all live to see that day. I'm sure we would. And I'm glad that moment is happening. And I also know those people who have stayed back in this country and who have contributed have gone to the top. They're earning decent salaries. They are included in policy and reforms, and they're valued. Similarly, people who have gone abroad have brought in so much of learning and value back to our country. We're so proud of people who are across the border and who are people whom we would like to emulate. So I think it's going to be a win-win solution when the entire ecosystem works towards it. And today, in India today, we have a lot of health missions, which is the Swasth Bharat, the Prime Minister's Yojana, and the National Rural Health Mission. So everything is going to include nurses. And I'm sure today has come a day when the attrition is calling for attention. So people are looking at how can you retain your nurses who are highly competent, who are highly super specialized. Could we look at different models of incentivization? And the public sector has already improved the pay scales, the designations, etc. I'm sure the private sector does it for a larger chunk of the nurses. Probably it's the bottom rung that needs to get its due worth. And I think we will all get united to do that for our profession.
Right, ma'am. I can see a lot of movement in nursing which is happening in India, and that's why probably it's sort of inspiring. That inspired me, because I have probably seeing two parts of nursing overseas and in India, and I know how I can probably cover that gap. This is one initiative where I try to bring that out here on the talk show so that more and more people get to know what nurses actually do. Because back in India, I feel the social awareness about nursing, yes, has improved a lot, but still people need to understand that nurses are very professionally well equipped, knowledgeable resources, which are very integral to healthcare. And that's why it's important to accept the fact and give that status to nurses, which is happening in India thanks to all the movements by so many people who are coming together and trying to voice it out very openly. You pointed out something about the overseas nurses. So our next question is going to be on the overseas nurses. So, we say that on one hand, we sort of produce about 1.2 lakh nurses per year in our country, in India. But on the other hand, we sort of lose about 30 to 35,000 to the overseas countries, right? Because there is a need for nurses all across the globe. I've also sort of researched and known that India earns about $80 billion per year in foreign exchange. And mind you, healthcare professionals and largely nurses are huge contributors of this. We know that, we know about foreign remittance. We know that is important to us. And you have always been accepting of this fact, because in so many of your interviews, which I sort of heard over the period of few days now, you always said that yes, we need to accept that brain drain is going to happen and nurses are going to go to the overseas countries. And you recognize the foreign remittance that comes in our country, which is important. But how do we strike a balance in India, because nurses continue to remain a vital resource. Nurses continue to remain a scarce resource back in India. So how do we balance this out without compromising on our own healthcare systems?
Yeah, thanks, Pearl. I think it's been more than a decade and a half while I've always believed that no point in lamenting or critiquing or crying out that, we're going to have a loss of our nurses to other countries. And I think it's important for us to enable meeting those aspirations. Many of them come into nursing because there is an opportunity to go abroad and make a great life. And I think it's for us to nurture that aspiration, because that's one of the entry points why people choose nursing. And it's high time for them in the last few years. So why not? Today, nurses have found themselves a place in the best hospitals in the world, and many of them are doing better than us at a very young age. And that brings in so much of value to our profession back in India. While I agree that there is always this demand supply disproportion that we see, and it's very hard for us to run our institutions because sometimes we really run thin on manpower. I think what's important is it's equally important for us to meet the aspirations and needs of our nurses back here, because not all of them will go. Those who stay back, it's important that we give them that great career pathway, be it recognition, pay, privileges, awards, higher education, some amount of flexibility in accommodating their personal needs in whichever way we can without compromising care. Putting them at the front end of many, many projects, which brings in more value back into the institution. And many of them thoroughly enjoy that privilege that is given to them. And as I say, the country is standing at a threshold where a lot is going to get invested back into the nursing fraternity here. I think what's important for us to do is to do a backward integration into the schools and colleges of nursing, because yes, we have a curriculum that prepares nurses at par with international standards, but many of our students do not have an exposure to the kind of big hospitals they then land up in. So catering to their needs back in the school should be one of the efforts that every enterprise must invest in. And Apollo has its own vertical that's trying to look at career aspiration surveys of nurses at the school level, and then see how we can build and enable that. So if they choose to stay back in India, how can we build those skills for them to enter into our hospitals? Is there a particular specialty that they want to be nurtured in? All that happens even before onboarding. And those who want to go abroad, we nurture them. Create a pipeline where nurses might want to come back after a short stint, because after all, there's a family here. There are a lot of people, they want to be back home. So I think it's a multi-pronged approach. And what's most important is it's important to define the scope of service of a nurse. You can't expect her to do anything and everything while she's at the bedside. There's so much of non-value add jobs which can be given away to not so technical resources. And as you started your dialogue with technology, so can we bring in a lot of technology to see that how do we ensure efficiency of our resources? So it's not just the number. It could be the quality of output they can produce, where we might want lesser numbers, get them higher pays. How do we look at incentivization? It's all going to be a new model. We have to think in a different manner. And that has to happen when the entire healthcare ecosystem comes together. It can't be a single hospital because our problems are similar. And we are all part of an association called ANI, which is talking about bringing that value back. So we are all equal enablers. When we want some resources, we talk to each other, we get that. We try and retain our best resources here. Those who wish to go abroad, we enable that. And I'm glad many of them come back. They want to come back into our enterprise. So they go, make good money, come back, and they bring so much more value into the organization. So I think it's an interesting time. It's a challenge. It's not easy. For an operations head to run the rosters on a daily basis is not easy. But I'm sure we are finding solutions to enable to manage patient care without disruption.
Yes, ma'am. I think everybody is doing a fantastic job in that way. I think that's the
Also,
biggest
there's
challenge
a
that every.
movement to increase the number of schools and colleges under the Heal by India, Heal for India promotion that is happening. So medical education, nursing education is going to expand. And then, the Medical Council of India was repealed and the National Commission was formed.
Right.
Similarly, the National Nursing Commission is going to be formed. So I'm sure experts will put their minds together to address one of this as the major challenge.
And I'm happy that all these things are happening because I'm here to see the changes that are happening. I remember when I passed out my master's in nursing, I met this one of my school friends in the train, and she was into finance, working with Nifty, and so I asked her, "How do you enjoy your job?" And then she asked me, and when you're young, you're so vibrant, and I'm like, I want to make a change in nursing. People don't know about it, but for the next 15 years, I got so embroiled in work, so busy with things, and I said, where did I lose myself? I wanted to do this, and I'm so glad that I can probably pursue that now. And there are so many others who are doing that as well. And like you said, every puzzle of the jigsaw has to fit in very well. And I think this is the time where the nurses, the policymakers, the government, everybody's probably thinking on the same lines. And like you rightly said, we have to make the best use of this so that the momentum goes on. In a couple of years, keeping my fingers crossed, we can see a huge change and a paradigm shift in nursing that's happening.
In
Let's,
fact, Pearl, today,
yes, ma'am.
sorry, in
Go
fact,
go on,
Pearl,
ma'am.
today's newspaper also reads about nursing shortage in India.
Does
Today's
it?
newspaper. So,
Oh,
so it's there. It's staring at us. It is a concern, and I think people are drawing attention to it. And not only that, today we don't want just general nurses. We want super specialities.
super,
We want
yes.
nurse-led clinics. There's so much that rides on the shoulder of a nurse when there is accreditation. But I am a constant believer that nurses, if they wish to go abroad, they must go abroad and they must make the best use. It brings pride to India. It drives the economic engine of India, and it brings in so much of credibility to our profession that our nurses are the most preferred in the world. And I just came back from Kerala. I went on an official trip, and I was so proud to see that the Kerala that I saw when I was a young girl versus today is so different. There are luxurious homes. The trend has changed, and invariably, there's been a nurse who's impacted that. Most of these homes belong to one of the nurses. So it brings in a lot of pride to the individual I am who belongs to the profession.
That's true. I'm sharing one more story. Like when I was back in Chennai, gone for some, trip over there. And I remember my mom-in-law telling me, there was this church over there which was newly getting built, and there was this nice, beautiful statue of Mother Mary over there. And my mom-in-law very proudly said, because of course the daughter-in-law is a nurse, she said, Pearl, who contributed to this? Who is the person who donated to this? There's a nurse who is working abroad, and she is the person who 100% contributed all amount for this particular grotto. Yes, you are absolutely right. A lot of changes do happen, and I think this needs to be brought up to everybody, saying that maybe they're not back here in the country, but they are contributing. And that's when the foreign remittance part came. That's when I started knowing about all these things. But yes, having said that, I do feel that our nurses who have gone abroad need to bring back what they learn. There has to be sort of a collaboration between people who are working there and people who are working back in our country, because there is a lot to learn, not just for us to learn from them, but I think there are things like sustainability, which happens very well in India, which is the key thing, which is in UK now. They are doing some studies on the Indian hospitals, eye hospitals, which are into sustainability and how they are, reusing things in a 100% disinfected manner. So I think it has to be a two-way process. Right, ma'am. Moving on to our next section rather. This is a rapid fire, and I'll just fire some few things to you, and whatever first thing comes to your mind, you can just help us with that. So, shall we begin then? Right. So, if not a nurse, then what other profession would you see Captain Usha Banerjee in?
Maybe I would have been a dancer or a sportswoman.
Lovely, yes. One advice you would give to your younger self?
To my younger self, seize every opportunity which you did. That's why you're here. So life is beautiful. Just take it on.
Carpe diem, yes, sir. Just seize the opportunity. And one advice you would give to the young nurses who are pursuing the profession now?
All the young people who are in the profession, I would just say that the profession belongs to you too. It should not be that, somebody will come and elevate the profession or change things for you. And the biggest movement that we can create is by demonstrating our clinical acumen and knowledge. And that will happen when you invest yourselves in continuous learning. So whether you are in the country, outside the country, in a hospital, outside a hospital, that's your choice. But you must give back to the profession. That's so important. I think it's time that people perceive nursing as one of the most important resource in a healthcare ecosystem. And that can happen only when nurses give back. Everyone should own this profession, even if you tomorrow laterally shift out into something else.
Absolutely, ma'am. I think, like somebody rightly said, let's stop playing a victim card and let's start, doing and giving back to our profession. One advice that you would give to the nursing leaders, ma'am?
Well, it's good to be a leader, but it's hard to sustain that title and that position and probably the chair that you sit in. And it's a turbulent time. It's not going to be easy. And it's important for nursing leaders to move away from being tactical leaders to more transformational leaders, where your job is to ensure that there is intellectual motivation to others who work in your teams. Two, there has to be some kind of an inspirational influence that you bring into the table. And you have to take everybody along and have that individual consideration for each individual in your team. And there's so much that today a leader can give back and get in return for staying back and leading the teams here. I will talk from the Indian context. So the day has arrived. Just make the best use of it.
Yes, the day has arrived. I think that's been our mantra throughout this talk today. What would be the advice you would give to the non-nursing leaders?
Well, if you really wish to be in the business of healthcare and you are at the helm of affairs or you are a colleague in any other department, please realize that the nurse is the front line and stands in between the patient and the organization. She is important to clinical outcomes. He, important to clinical outcomes, important to patient safety, important to accreditations, important to quality, important to the clinical practice of every doctor, important for the reputation and the reimbursement of the organization, because she cuts across the entire function of who we are as a hospital entity. So give them the due credit, weightage, respect that they richly deserve. Gone are those days when people don't include you. Gone are those days when people do not give you the due weightage. Now it is for us to play our role too
Absolutely.
and get spotted.
Absolutely, absolutely. Some people just tend to be afraid, ma'am. They're not sure whether they're courageous enough to stand up and be a part of that moment. But I think nurses do need to realize that they're very well equipped to be in part of that circle. And it's you rightly said, it's time that we take on, the torch and start moving ahead. Right now, if you were to grant three wishes for betterment of nursing profession, there's a genie with the lamp. What would your three wishes be?
I would say that I know I would love all my nurses to stay back in India and make this country very proud of the nursing profession because there's so much of value they can give. Second, I would wish every nurse to get the best of life, pay, privilege, power, respect, um, They should have good homes, they should drive good cars, everything that's possible. Third, I would want the nurses also to give back to the profession. So we unite as a great force and put nursing profession prominently on the map of the world that we have arrived.
Yes, Tathastu, amen to all the three wishes, ma'am. So the last question of a rapid fire, ma'am. You have been an inspiring leader to so many nurses. What is that one motivational quote that drives you to keep on your journey with such enthusiasm?
Well, Pearl, I feel when you have this persuasive passion and you have an optimism about everything that you do, and there's a compelling vision that you are after, I don't think you really have to push too hard because the vision pulls you. That's what drives me.
The vision pulls you so deep and so inspiring, ma'am. Yes, it's important that we all need to, have that one vision that we believe in, because that sort of drives you no matter the ups and downs in life. So thank you so much, ma'am. Here we come to the end of the show. Thank you for being a part of this show and gracing this platform and inspiring so many nurses in the country. Uh, Thank you so much for being here.
Well, Pearl, I think it's my turn to thank you for what you are doing. It's amazing to see that you are across the border in that part of the world in a different time zone, investing your efforts, money, everything. This is a great moment for nursing, especially for nurses at India, that there are nurses like you who make that big difference. And this truly is something that I would feel extremely grateful for. So thank you so much.
Thank you for being on our show, ma'am. I hope you enjoyed it.
Well, of course, I've known you as a person, I've worked with you, and I think the entire country knows you. And today, the entire world will know you.